Cole Brennan believed his past was buried 9 years deep, until the day a woman stepped off a broken stagecoach, clutching a bloodied silver ring, and called him husband. He didn't recognize her face, but the ring in his pocket burned like a brand. In the unforgiving plains of Wyoming, where men rebuild themselves from dust and silence, one forgotten vow was about to tear down everything he'd become. Some debts can't be outrun. Some promises carve themselves into bone. And some women refuse to disappear, no matter how hard a man tries to forget. If you're ready for a story of reckoning, redemption, and a love that refused to die, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The crack of a gunshot echoed across the Wyoming plains like God clearing his throat. Cole Brennan's hammer froze mid-swing. He turned slowly, years of war making the movement automatic, his body already calculating distance, trajectory, threat level. The sound had come from the east, where the road from Cheyenne cut through the grassland like a scar that refused to heal. The stagecoach appeared through the dust, listing hard to one side, one wheel completely shattered. The horses were wild-eyed, foam flecking their bits, and the driver was sawing at the reins with the desperation of a man who knew his luck had just run out. The coach lurched to a stop in front of the boarding house. And for a moment everything went still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Cole set down his hammer with deliberate care. Around him, Ash Ridge stirred to life. Mrs. Chen appeared on the porch of her general store, wiping flour from her hands. Old Samuel paused his work at the livery. The town had learned to read trouble the way other places read weather. 2 men in city clothes climbed out first, brushing dust from their jackets like the plains were something that could be shaken off. Cole dismissed them without a second glance. Then she stepped down, her left hand gripped the coach door for balance. Her right hand clutched a worn carpet bag. And between her fingers, catching the afternoon light, was a silver ring stained with blood. Cole's chest tightened. He told himself it meant nothing. Told himself he didn't know her. Told himself the way his hand instinctively moved toward the pocket where he'd carried an identical ring for 9 years was just reflex. She looked up. Their eyes met across 30 feet of dusty street, and Cole Brennan's carefully reconstructed world began to crumble. She was past 30, he guessed, though hardship made age difficult to read. Her dress was gray, practical, mended at the seams. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple knot. She wasn't beautiful in the way men wrote poems about, but there was something in the set of her shoulders. The straightness of her spine, that demanded attention. Strength carved from necessity. Dignity learned through suffering. She started walking toward him. The whole town seemed to pause. Mrs. Chen's broom went still. Samuel's hammer hung suspended. Even the 2 city men stopped complaining to watch. She stopped 6 feet away. Close enough that Cole could see the dust on her boots, the careful repair work on her collar, the way her hands trembled slightly on the carpet bag. Close enough to see the blood on the ring wasn't hers. It had soaked into the silver from prolonged contact with a wound that had already begun to clot. Cole Brennan. His name in her mouth was a key turning in a lock he'd thought rusted shut 9 years ago. "Ma'am." His voice came out rough, and used to more than basic conversation. "I think you've got me confused with someone else." "No." The word was soft, but it had edges. Sharp enough to cut. "No, I don't think I do." She reached into her bag slowly, like she understood sudden movements were dangerous around men like him, and pulled out a folded paper yellowed at the creases. She held it out. Cole didn't take it. Couldn't. His hands had gone numb. "I don't know you," he said, but the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "You did." She unfolded the paper herself, held it where he could see. 9 years ago. In a chapel outside Fort Laramie. You were drunk. I was desperate. The chaplain had shaky hands and bad eyesight. But the paper's legal all the same, marriage certificate. The words swam before his eyes. Names. Dates. Signatures he couldn't quite focus on because his heart was hammering too hard against his ribs. You're lying, I wish I was. She folded the paper, tucked it away with movements that spoke of long practice. Believe me, Cole, I've wished that every day for 9 years. But lying doesn't change what's written. Doesn't change what happened, I would remember, but even as he said it, images were surfacing. Fragments. Pieces of a night he'd spent a decade trying to drown. Whiskey fumes. Fear thick as smoke. A woman's voice saying please. And him saying yes because what the hell did it matter? He was shipping out at dawn and the war was going to kill him anyway. So why not give her what she needed? Whatever it was. It didn't cost him anything, oh God, Eleanor. The name came from somewhere deep. Somewhere he'd locked away and thrown away the key. She flinched at her own name, and he saw it cost her something to hear it from his mouth. Eleanor Morrison, she corrected quietly. Though the paper says Eleanor Brennan now, the world tilted. Cole reached for the fence post to steady himself, splinters biting his palm, grounding him. Around them, Ash Ridge had started moving again, but he could feel them watching. Mrs. Chen had disappeared inside, but her shadow was visible through the window. Samuel had given up all pretense of working. Why? Cole's voice cracked. Why are you here? Why now? Eleanor's face did something complicated. Grief and anger and exhaustion folding together like a house of cards collapsing in slow motion. Because I'm tired, Cole. Tired of waiting. Tired of wondering if you're alive or dead. Tired of being married to a ghost. She took a breath, steadied herself. And because I need you to sign papers so I can finally be free of this, you should have, he stopped. Should have what? Forgotten him. Found another man. That's what he'd wanted, wasn't it? That's why he'd never gone back. Never written, never acknowledged the vow he'd made in a moment of fear-soaked charity. Should have what? She challenged, and there was steel beneath the exhaustion now. Should have gotten an annulment. I tried. Lawyer in Cheyenne said I needed you to sign papers or proof you were dead. I had neither. She adjusted her grip on the carpet bag. Should have moved on. I tried that too. Turns out being married to a man who abandoned you doesn't make you particularly appealing to other prospects. Abandoned. The word hit like a fist. I didn't, but he had. He absolutely had. He'd walked away from Fort Laramie the morning after, head pounding, barely remembering the night before. And when pieces of it came back, the chapel, the vow, the woman's desperate face, he'd pushed it down, told himself it wasn't real, couldn't be real, was just another casualty of war. You did, Eleanor said, reading his face. You walked away and you never looked back. The war ended 6 years ago, Cole. 6 years, he'd been drifting for 6 years. Town to town. Never settling. Always moving. Telling himself he had nothing to go back to. And all that time she'd been, what? Waiting? Searching. Why didn't you find me sooner? I tried. Her voice was flat now, reciting facts. Fort Laramie said you'd been discharged. No forwarding address. Your company captain was dead. The 2 men who served with you had no idea where you'd gone. I followed rumors. Cole Brennan in Colorado. Cole Brennan in Montana. Always 2 steps behind. Always wrong. She shifted the carpet bag to her other hand. Then 6 months ago, I heard about a man in Ash Ridge. Ex-soldier. Kept to himself. Went by Brennan. I didn't let myself hope. But I couldn't not try. She'd been looking for him for 9 years. The knowledge sat in his chest like a stone. I can't be who you need, Cole said, and he meant it. I'm not that man anymore. Hell, I don't know if I ever was. I'm not asking you to be anything. Eleanor's eyes met his, and he saw she meant it. I'm asking you to sign papers so I can be free of you legally. The way you've been free of me in every other way that matters, annulment papers. Freedom. It was what he wanted. What he'd wanted from the moment he'd sobered up enough to realize what he'd done. So why did the thought of it feel like another kind of abandonment? Where are you staying? The question surprised them both. Eleanor blinked. The boarding house, I suppose. If they have room, they do. Ash Ridge always had room. Too many people left. Not enough came. Tell Mrs. Garrett I sent you. She'll give you a fair rate. He paused. And then I'll think about it. It wasn't much. It wasn't even a promise. But something in Eleanor's face shifted. Some tight thing loosening just enough to let her breathe. All right, she said. I'll be here 3 days. After that, I'm going back to Cheyenne. With or without your signature, she turned to go, then paused. Reached into her bag again. This time she pulled out a ring. Cheap silver, worn thin. The kind of thing a soldier buys when he has more fear than money. You dropped this, she said. That night. I kept it. Thought maybe you'd come back for it someday. She held it out. Cole stared at it like it was a snake. Then slowly, he reached into his own pocket and pulled out an identical ring. He'd carried it for 9 years without knowing why. Without letting himself examine it too closely. Just weighed in his pocket that felt like penance. Eleanor's breath caught. For a long moment they stood there. 2 people holding matching rings. Matching proof of a vow neither had quite been able to forget. 3 days, Eleanor said again, and this time her voice shook. She walked away before he could answer, heading for the boarding house with her back straight and her head high. Every line of her body screamed dignity, even as her hands trembled on the carpet bag. Cole watched her go, the ring burning in his palm. By sunset, everyone in Ash Ridge knew. Cole heard it in the silence when he walked into the saloon that evening. Saw it in the way conversation stopped and started again just a beat too late. He ordered whiskey and ignored the stares. But he felt them like brands. Heard you got yourself a wife, Jack Mercer said finally, sliding onto the stool beside him. Jack was the closest thing Cole had to a friend in Ash Ridge. Another ex-soldier. Another man trying to forget. They'd never talked about what they were running from, but they recognized it in each other the way wolves recognize their own. Apparently, Cole said, you gonna keep her or sign her loose? Don't know yet. Jack signaled for his own drink, considered it. Must be something. Woman tracking you down after all these years. Most men would count themselves lucky to be found. Most men aren't me. True enough. Jack took his whiskey, rolled it between his palms. You remember her? No. Then, because lying to Jack was like lying to himself, maybe pieces. It was the night before we shipped out. I was trying to drink myself brave and doing a poor job of both, and she was. Cole closed his eyes, reaching for fragments. Young. Scared. Needed something I could give without it costing me anything. He laughed, bitter. Turns out I was wrong about the cost, usually are. Jack drank. What did she need a husband for? Don't know. Didn't ask then. Can't ask now. Why not? Because looking at her hurt. Because the shame was so thick he could barely breathe through it. Because he'd spent 9 years running from everything the war had made him. And she was proof that some things couldn't be outrun, because it doesn't matter, Cole said instead. What's done is done, is it? Jack set his glass down. She's here. That means it ain't done. That means you got a choice to make. She wants an annulment. That what you want? No. Yes. He didn't know. Want had nothing to do with it. Want was dangerous. Want was the thing that got men killed. Or worse, got them hoping. It's cleaner, Cole said. Cleaner ain't always better. Jack stood, dropped coins on the bar. But that's your call to make. Just don't take too long making it. Woman like that, with that kind of spine, she won't wait forever. He left Cole alone with the whiskey and the ghosts. Cole didn't go back to his room that night. He walked instead, out past the edge of town where the plains opened up like a dark sea. Stars scattered overhead with a carelessness that felt like mockery. The ring was still in his pocket. He pulled it out, held it up to the starlight. Cheap silver, worn thin. Exactly like the one Eleanor carried. He remembered buying it. Or thought he did. A peddler outside the fort, selling goods to soldiers who knew they might not come back. The man had looked at Cole's drunk, desperate face and named a price that was almost fair. For your girl, the peddler had asked. For a vow, Cole had answered. He'd thought it would be simple. A kindness. Nothing more. The chaplain had asked if he understood the commitment, and Cole had nodded because words were hard. And what did it matter anyway? He was dead already. Just waiting for the dying to catch up with the knowing, except he hadn't died, he'd lived. And living meant the vow had lived too. Carried in his pocket like a stone. Like proof of something he couldn't let himself examine, Eleanor had carried hers too. 9 years she'd looked for him. 9 years she'd stayed legally bound to a man who'd walked away without a word. The weight of that hit him harder than any bullet ever had. He should sign the papers. Give her what she came for. It was the decent thing to do. The only thing that made sense. She deserved to be free of him. To find someone who could be what she needed. Who wouldn't carry the war in his bones like an infection that wouldn't heal. But even as he thought it, his hand closed around the ring until the edges bit his palm. Eleanor stood at the window of her rented room, looking out over Ash Ridge's broken streets. The town was quieter than she'd expected. Smaller. It felt like the kind of place people came to forget, which meant it was exactly the kind of place Cole Brennan would end up. She was tired of being alone. The thought came unbidden. Unwelcome. She pushed it down, focused on the facts. 3 days. That's all she'd given herself. All she could afford. 3 days to get his signature or proof of abandonment. Then back to Cheyenne to file the papers and finally close this chapter. She should have done this years ago. Should have accepted that the man who'd said those vows was gone. If he'd ever really existed at all. Should have moved on the way everyone told her to, her mother. Her friends. The well-meaning church ladies who clucked their tongues and said she was wasting her youth on a ghost, but she'd needed to know. Needed to look him in the face and understand why he'd left. Needed to hear him say the words. That it meant nothing. That she meant nothing, so she could stop wondering if maybe, somehow, it had been real. One look at his face had told her everything. He didn't remember her. Oh, he remembered the night. She'd seen the flash of recognition, the guilt. But he didn't remember her. Didn't remember the way she trembled asking the chaplain to find someone, anyone, willing to marry her so she wouldn't be sent back east to the uncle who looked at her like hunger. Didn't remember how his drunk, defeated, yes, had felt like salvation. Didn't remember the way he'd said the vows with his eyes closed, like a man confessing sins. Or how his hands had shook when he put the ring on her finger. She remembered all of it. A soft knock on the door startled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Mrs. Garrett, the boarding house owner, holding a tray with tea and bread. Thought you might be hungry, Mrs. Garrett said. Her eyes were kind but shrewd. Cole Brennan sent you here. That must mean something. It means he's being decent, Eleanor said, accepting the tray. Nothing more, decent's a start. Mrs. Garrett lingered in the doorway. You his wife, then? Like people are saying, Eleanor set the tray down carefully. Legally, yes. In every other way that matters, no, and you're here to change that. The legal part, I mean, I'm here to finish what should have been finished 9 years ago. Mrs. Garrett studied her for a long moment. Sometimes what should be done and what needs to be done are different things. Dear. You'll figure out which is which. She turned to leave, then paused. That man's been running from something since he got here. Maybe he needed someone to finally catch him. After she left, Eleanor sat on the narrow bed and pulled out the ring. Cole's ring. The one he dropped that night. She'd carried it for 9 years, waiting for a moment that never came. Now she had 3 days to let it go. She just wasn't sure if she was ready. The telegram arrived the next morning, slipped under her door while she slept. Eleanor found it when she woke, her heart already racing before she opened it. The words were brief. Precise. Terrifying. I know where you are. Come back before it's too late. T.A. Thomas Ashford. Eleanor's hands shook as she held the paper. She'd known he would find her eventually. Thomas always found what he was looking for. But she'd hoped for more time. Hoped she could get Cole's signature and disappear before Thomas realized she was gone. She moved to the window, staring out at Ash Ridge's quiet streets. Somewhere out there, Cole was working. Building fences or fixing roofs or doing whatever it was men like him did to keep their hands busy and their minds quiet. He didn't know what was coming, didn't know that by finding him, she'd put him in danger. Eleanor folded the telegram carefully and tucked it into her bag. Then she struck a match and held it to the corner until the paper caught fire. She watched it burn in the wash basin, turning Thomas's words to ash. But burning the message didn't change the truth. Thomas was coming. And when he arrived, Cole would learn that some vows came with prices higher than either of them had imagined. She had 3 days. Maybe less, and she still didn't know if she was here to save Cole or to say goodbye. Cole found Eleanor at breakfast the next morning, sitting alone at a corner table in the boarding house dining room. She looked like she hadn't slept, dark circles under her eyes, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold an hour ago. He stood in the doorway for a moment, hat in his hands, trying to find words that wouldn't sound like everything he'd already said and failed to mean. Morning, he finally managed. She looked up, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or resignation. Good morning, I was thinking, Cole said, moving closer but keeping the table between them. There's a place about 2 miles east of here. The old Caldwell property. The family that used to live there, they're gone now. But it's good land. Good bones. I thought maybe you'd like to see it. Eleanor studied him over the rim of her cup. Why would I want to see abandoned land? Because I think you should know what I've been thinking about these past 3 years. What I've been too scared to reach for. He turned his hat in his hands. And because if we're going to talk about the past 9 years, I'd rather do it somewhere the whole town isn't listening. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. They do have opinions, don't they? That's one word for it. Eleanor set down her cup. All right. Give me 10 minutes. She was back in 8, wearing a split riding skirt that had seen better days and a practical jacket that made her look like she belonged to this land in a way her gray dress never had. Cole had 2 horses saddled and waiting, and he helped her mount before swinging up onto his own. They rode out of Ash Ridge in silence. Not the heavy silence of yesterday, but something different. Anticipation, maybe. Or the quiet of 2 people who'd said enough words and now just needed to be. The land opened up around them, vast and rolling, still green from recent rains. Cole led them east, following a path that was more memory than visible trail. The Caldwell property revealed itself gradually, first the fencing, weathered but intact. Then the barn, listing slightly but still standing. Finally, the house itself. It was smaller than Eleanor had expected. 2 rooms, maybe 3, with a porch that wrapped around the front. The roof needed work, and one window was cracked, but there was something solid about it. Something that spoke of people who'd built with the intention of staying. The Caldwells, Cole said, dismounting and helping Eleanor down. Henry and Sarah. They died last winter. Both within 3 days of each other. He went first. She followed. Like she couldn't imagine staying without him, Eleanor walked slowly toward the house, her hand trailing along the porch railing. They loved each other, 43 years. Cole followed her up the steps. The door wasn't locked, nobody locked doors this far out, and he pushed it open. Inside, everything was preserved. Dust covered, but preserved. A bed frame in the corner. A table with 2 chairs. Dishes on a shelf. Books by the window. It was like the Caldwells had just stepped out and planned to return any moment. Eleanor moved through the space slowly, touching things with gentle fingers. The quilt on the bed. The books. The worn seat of the rocking chair. They left it to me, Cole said quietly. Henry told me before he died. Said I'd taken care of them when they were sick, that I deserved something that was mine. But I haven't, I couldn't, you couldn't accept it, Eleanor finished. Because you didn't feel like you'd earned it, Cole looked at her sharply. How did you? Because I know what it's like to feel unworthy of good things. Eleanor turned to face him. To believe that everything good is temporary. That you'll lose it the moment you reach for it. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Cole glanced toward the window. The sky had darkened while they'd been inside. Clouds rolling in fast from the west, storms coming, he said. We should. The first drops of rain hit like thrown stones. Within seconds, it became a downpour. The barn, Cole said, grabbing Eleanor's hand. Come on, they ran through the rain, reaching the barn just as lightning split the sky. Cole hauled the door open and they tumbled inside, both of them soaked through and breathing hard. The barn was in better shape than the house. Dry, at least. Old straw in the loft and tools hanging on the walls. Cole found a tarp and spread it on the ground near what remained of a hay bale. Eleanor sank down onto it, wrapping her arms around herself. Are you cold? Cole asked. A little. He shrugged out of his jacket. It was wet, but less wet than hers, and draped it over her shoulders. Then he set about building a small fire in an old iron barrel someone had used as a makeshift stove. The fire caught slowly, reluctantly, but eventually warmth began to spread through the space. They sat in silence for a long time. The only sounds were the rain hammering the roof and the occasional crack of thunder. Cole kept feeding small pieces of wood into the fire, his movements mechanical, giving his hands something to do while his mind raced. Finally, Eleanor spoke. Her voice was so quiet he almost missed it beneath the storm. I lost a child. Cole's hands froze. For months after you left, she continued, staring at the fire. A girl. Rose. She came too early. Too small. Lived 3 hours. The words hit Cole like physical blows, driving the air from his lungs. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Had no idea what to say because nothing was adequate. Nothing could touch the size of that loss. I didn't know, he managed. How could you? Eleanor's gaze stayed on the flames. You were gone. I was alone. The midwife did what she could, but some things can't be saved no matter how hard you try. Eleanor, I'm not telling you to make you feel guilty, she interrupted. I'm telling you because if we're going to talk truth, then all of it has to be on the table. You left. I was pregnant. I lost her. Those are the facts. Cole's hands curled into fists against his thighs. Did she have a name, Rose? Eleanor's voice cracked just slightly. I called her Rose because I thought maybe she was a grace. A gift. Something good from something broken. The grief was so thick Cole could taste it. Could feel it pressing against his ribs like a hand squeezing his heart. I'm sorry, he said, knowing it was inadequate. God, Eleanor, I'm so sorry, are you? She turned to look at him then, and her eyes were dry but fierce. Or are you just sorry you have to know about it now? Both, Cole admitted, because she'd asked for truth. Both. And I hate that. I hate that I wasn't there. I hate that you went through that alone. I hate that a child died because I was too broken to do the decent thing and come back. You didn't kill her, Cole. Eleanor looked away again. She wasn't strong enough. Or the world wasn't kind enough. I don't know. She paused. I blamed you for a long time. Blamed you for leaving, for not being there, for making me go through that without anyone to hold on to. But blame is exhausting. And eventually I got tired. Is that why you came here? To stop being tired, I came here to be done, Eleanor said. To close the door on 9 years of waiting and wondering. To finally let go of the idea that maybe, somehow, you'd come back and make sense of it all. She laughed, bitter and small. Stupid, right? After all this time, some part of me was still hoping. Before Cole could respond, Eleanor reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. Not the marriage certificate. Something else. Folded and refolded so many times the creases had worn thin, she held it out to him. I need you to read this. Cole took it carefully. Unfolded it. It was a telegram, the text printed in neat capital letters. I know where you are. Come back before it's too late. T.A. Ice flooded Cole's veins. Who's T.A.? Eleanor's hands were shaking now. Really shaking. Thomas Ashford. A lawyer in Cheyenne. After Rose died, I had nothing. No money. No family willing to help. Thomas offered to pay for the burial. To help me get back on my feet. I thought he was being kind, but he wasn't, no. The word was barely a whisper. He was buying leverage. For 2 years, he calls it courting, but it's not that. It's control. He wants to marry me, Cole. And when I told him I couldn't because I was still legally married to you, he said he'd help me find you. Help me get the annulment. She looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. But then he found out you were alive. And everything changed. Changed how? He said if you were alive, he'd make sure you paid for abandoning me. Said he'd ruin you. Hurt you. I don't know if he meant it or if he was just trying to scare me, but I couldn't risk it. Her voice broke. So I left. Came here to get your signature before he could find you. Before he could make good on his threats, Cole felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. You're not here for an annulment because you want to be free. You're here because you're trying to protect me. I'm here for both, Eleanor said. I do want to be free, Cole. Free of the waiting, the wondering, the being stuck between married and not. But yes. I'm also here because Thomas is dangerous, and I didn't want you caught up in something that was my fault. Your fault. Cole moved closer, his voice sharp. None of this is your fault, Eleanor. I'm the one who walked away. I'm the one who left you alone and pregnant and, he stopped, forced himself to breathe. You said he's been courting you for 2 years, she nodded, and you've been saying no, I've been saying I'm married. But he doesn't care about that. He cares about winning. About getting what he wants. Eleanor wrapped her arms around herself. I owe him money, Cole. The burial, the rent, the food, it all adds up. He has papers saying I owe him nearly $300. If I don't pay, he can, there are laws, legal ways he can force me to, $300. Cole's mind was racing. $300 was a fortune. More than he'd saved in 3 years of work, but not more than the Caldwell property was worth. I have it, he said. Eleanor stared at him. What? I have it. Or I will, once I sell this place. Henry left it to me. Jack, my friend, he's been telling me for months that developers from back east are looking for land like this. Good water, good grazing. They'd pay twice what I'd need, Cole, no. I can't let you, You're not letting me do anything." Cole moved closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her hazel eyes. "I'm choosing to do it. For you. For Rose. For the vow I made 9 years ago that I was too drunk and scared to understand, but that I'm finally ready to honor." Eleanor shook her head. "You don't understand. Thomas won't just take the money and go away. He'll find another way to control me. Another debt. Another threat. He always does, then we don't give him the chance." Cole took her hands, felt how cold her fingers were. "Eleanor, listen to me. I spent 9 years running from this. From you. From what I did. But I'm done running. If this Thomas wants to come after me, let him come. At least I'll be facing it instead of hiding from it. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying." Cole's grip tightened. "I'm saying I'm not signing those papers. I'm not setting you free so you can walk back into a trap. I'm saying we face this together." "Together?" Eleanor's laugh was almost hysterical. "Cole, we don't even know each other, so we learn." His voice softened. "We have 3 days, right? You said 3 days. Let's use them. Not to end this, but to figure out if we can make it real." The rain had slowed to a steady drumming on the roof. In the dim light of the barn, with the fire flickering between them, Eleanor looked at Cole like she was seeing him for the first time. "What if Thomas comes before 3 days are up?" she asked quietly. "Then we deal with him when he gets here." Cole stood, pulling Eleanor gently to her feet. "But right now, in this moment, it's just us. Just two people trying to figure out if a vow made in fear and desperation can become something worth keeping." Eleanor looked up at him. Really looked at him. At the lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting into sun and wind. At the scar on his jaw he'd never explained. At the way his hands, rough from work, held hers with surprising gentleness. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too." And then, slowly, carefully, she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his chest. Not a kiss. Not a promise. Just a moment of shared exhaustion. Of two people too tired to keep carrying everything alone. Cole's arms came around her, and they stood like that while the storm raged outside and the fire burned low. Neither of them knew if 3 days would be enough. Neither of them knew if Thomas would give them even that long. But for now, in the shelter of an old barn on land that might become home, it was enough to not be alone. The storm passed by evening, leaving the world washed clean and smelling of wet earth. Cole and Eleanor rode back to Ash Ridge in companionable silence, something fragile and new growing between them. But as they crested the last hill before town, Eleanor saw something that made her blood run cold. A black carriage sat in front of the boarding house. Expensive. Out of place in Ash Ridge's rough streets, and standing beside it, brushing dust from his expensive coat, was Thomas Ashford. He'd found her, and 3 days had just become right now. Thomas Ashford looked exactly as Eleanor remembered. Tall, handsome in a polished way, with the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of getting what he wanted. His clothes were impeccable despite the dusty journey, dark suit, crisp collar, silver watch chain glinting in the fading light. He smiled when he saw them approaching. It was not a kind smile. Cole felt Eleanor stiffen beside him. Her breathing had gone shallow, her hands tight on the reins. He wanted to reach over, to touch her shoulder, to tell her it would be all right. But he didn't know if that was true. They dismounted in front of the boarding house. Thomas watched them with that same unsettling smile, his eyes moving between Eleanor and Cole like he was calculating odds. "Eleanor, my dear," Thomas said, his voice smooth as oil. "You left without saying goodbye." "I've been terribly worried. I left you a letter," Eleanor said. Her voice was steady, but Cole could hear the effort it took. "Explaining where I was going and why. A letter saying you were chasing a ghost across Wyoming to get an annulment from a man who abandoned you." Thomas's smile widened. Surely you can see how that sounds. You're not thinking clearly. The strain of the past years, it's understandable that you'd need closure, but this is extreme. Cole had heard enough. He stepped forward, putting himself slightly in front of Eleanor. Who are you? Thomas's gaze shifted to him. And Cole saw the assessment. The dismissal. Thomas Ashford. I'm a friend of Eleanor's from Cheyenne. And you are, Cole Brennan. Understanding flickered across Thomas's face, followed by something that looked like pity. Or mockery. It was hard to tell the difference. Ah. The husband. Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out a leather folder. Well, Eleanor, you found him. Now you can get your annulment and we can put this unfortunate chapter behind us. We. Eleanor's voice was sharp. There is no we, Thomas. I told you before I left that I needed to do this alone, and I respect that, Thomas said, his patience wearing thin at the edges. But surely you've had enough time now. I've brought the carriage. It's just down the road with my driver. We can leave first thing tomorrow morning. Have you back in Cheyenne by week's end? He reached for Eleanor's hand. She pulled away. Come now, don't be stubborn, Thomas said. You know I only want what's best for you, and you think you know what's best for me. Eleanor's anger was building. Cole could see it in the set of her shoulders, the way her hands clenched. You think chasing me across Wyoming to tell me I'm not thinking clearly is what's best? I think you've been through an ordeal and you need someone to help you see reason. Thomas's voice hardened. This man, he gestured at Cole with barely concealed disgust, he abandoned you for 9 years. He's a drifter. A nobody. What kind of future could he possibly offer you? The words were meant to cut, and they did. But Cole kept his expression neutral, his voice calm. That's Eleanor's decision to make. Not yours. I'm making her an offer, Thomas said, turning back to Eleanor. A real offer. Marriage. Security. A home in Cheyenne society. Everything you've wanted. Everything you deserve. All you have to do is sign these papers and let this mistake fade into the past where it belongs. He produced documents from the leather folder, held them out to her. Annulment papers, Cole realized. The man had brought annulment papers. Eleanor stared at them like they were snakes. You brought papers. To make it easier for you. Thomas's voice softened, became gentle. Condescending. I know this has been difficult, so I took the liberty of having my lawyer draw them up. All Brennan needs to do is sign, and you're free. Free to marry me, if you'll have me. His smile returned. I've been patient, Eleanor. I've waited while you worked through this. But surely you can see that this is the sensible choice. I can give you stability. Respectability. A life worthy of you. Cole watched Eleanor's face. Saw her looking at the papers, at Thomas, at him. Saw her weighing options the way people do when they're exhausted and scared and being offered an easy way out. Eleanor, Cole said quietly. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. But make sure it's your choice. Not his. Thomas's expression darkened. Don't listen to him. He's had 9 years to make his case and he never bothered. Now that you've finally tracked him down, he suddenly wants to play husband. That's not love, Eleanor. That's guilt, and what is it you're offering? Eleanor's voice was cold. Love? Or the satisfaction of rescuing a poor abandoned woman and adding her to your list of charitable causes? Thomas's face flushed. That's unfair, is it? Eleanor stepped forward, away from Cole, toward Thomas. Because in all the months you've been courting me in Cheyenne, you've never once asked what I wanted. You've told me what you think I need. What you think is best. What you think I should do. That's not partnership, Thomas. That's ownership. I'm trying to help you, I don't need help. Eleanor's voice was ice. I need respect. I need someone who sees me as an equal, not a problem to be solved or a prize to be won. And I sure as hell don't need someone showing up uninvited, telling me I'm not thinking clearly. Eleanor, please, go home, Thomas. Eleanor cut him off. Thank you for coming all this way, but I don't need you here. I don't need your papers or your carriage or your offers. I need space to make my own decision. You're making a mistake. Thomas's voice had lost all its warmth. You're throwing away security for a man who doesn't deserve you, maybe, Eleanor said. But it'll be my mistake to make. Not yours. Thomas stood there for a long moment, clearly unused to being refused. Then he turned to Cole, his expression ugly. You won't make her happy, he said. Men like you never do. You'll drag her down to your level. And when she finally realizes what she's given up, it'll be too late. That's enough, Eleanor said sharply. Thomas shoved the papers back into the folder, his movements jerky with barely controlled anger. When this falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to me. He stalked to his carriage, climbed in without looking back, and within moments was gone in a cloud of dust. The street was silent. Cole realized a small crowd had gathered, Mrs. Chen on her porch, Samuel at the livery, even Mrs. Winters watching from the bank. They'd all heard every word. Eleanor stood perfectly still, staring at the dust settling where Thomas's carriage had been. Her hands were shaking. Are you all right? Cole asked quietly. I don't know. Eleanor turned to him, and her eyes were bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. Part of me wanted to take those papers. Take the easy way out. He's right about one thing, he could give me security, but I'd have to give up myself to get it. Eleanor's voice was steady despite the tears. And I've already lost too much. I'm not losing myself too. Cole wanted to pull her into his arms right there in front of everyone. Wanted to tell her she was the bravest person he'd ever met. But he could feel the town watching, and he knew Eleanor needed space to breathe. Come on, he said instead. Let's get you inside. But before they could move, a voice called out from down the street, Cole. Cole, wait. Jack Mercer was running toward them, his face grim. He had a telegram in his hand. We got a problem, Jack said, breathing hard. Got a wire from the marshal in Cheyenne. That man who just left, Thomas Ashford, he's wanted for questioning in connection with a gun smuggling ring. They think he's been using his law practice as a front. Cole felt the world tilt. Gun smuggling, that's not all. Jack's expression darkened. Remember that stranger I tangled with last week? The one who tried to bushwhack me? Marshall says his name is Vance Keller. He's known to work for Ashford. Eleanor had gone pale. Thomas sent someone to hurt you, to watch you, most likely, Jack said. Make sure you stayed in line. When I started poking around, asking questions, I became a problem. He looked at Cole. You need to know what you're dealing with here. This isn't just some lawyer with hurt feelings. This is a man who uses violence to get what he wants. Cole's jaw tightened. Where's Keller now? In the jail. Marshall wants to question him, but he's not talking. Jack folded the telegram. But Ashford doesn't know we've got him yet. Which means he might come back. Let him come, Cole said. His voice was flat, dangerous. This ends now. Cole, no, Eleanor started. Yes. Cole turned to her. You've been running from him for 2 years. I've been running from everything for 9. We're both done running. If Ashford wants a fight, he'll get one. But it ends here. In Ash Ridge. Where I finally decided to stop being a coward. Jack cleared his throat. There's one more thing you should know. The Caldwell property, the inheritance Henry left you, the papers are already filed. Legally, it's yours. Has been for 6 months. You just never went to claim it. Cole stared at him. 6 months, Henry made sure it was ironclad before he died. Didn't want anyone contesting it. Jack's expression softened. He knew you'd try to refuse it. So he made it impossible to give back. The land is yours, Cole. Along with everything on it. Eleanor looked between them. Everything? Henry Caldwell was more than a rancher, Jack explained. He was careful. Frugal. Saved every penny for 40 years. When he died, there was nearly $2,000 hidden in the house. Plus the land value. Plus the livestock. He met Cole's eyes. You're not poor anymore, brother. Haven't been for 6 months. You just didn't know it, $2,000. The number was so large Cole couldn't quite process it. More than enough to pay Eleanor's debt 10 times over. More than enough to give her the security Thomas had promised, enough to give her a real choice. I need to tell you something, Cole said to Eleanor. His voice was rough. And I should have told you earlier, but I was ashamed. Ashamed of what? Of not deserving it. Cole took a breath. 6 months ago, Jack told me about the inheritance. Told me Henry had left me the property and everything on it. And I refused to accept it. Told him to find someone else. Because I couldn't let myself have something good when I'd done nothing but run and hide for 9 years. Eleanor's eyes widened. You've known for 6 months that you had money, known and refused to use it. Cole's hands clenched at his sides. Jack kept telling me I was being a fool. That Henry wanted me to have it. That I'd earned it by taking care of them when they were sick. But all I could think about was, he stopped, forced himself to continue. All I could think about was my unit. The men who died while I survived. The Caldwells who died while I lived. Even you, married to me and suffering while I ran. I didn't feel like I deserved anything good. So I told myself I didn't want it, but you do want it, Eleanor said softly. Don't you? I want. Cole looked at her, really looked at her. I want to stop punishing myself for surviving. I want to accept that maybe I'm allowed to build something instead of just tearing myself down. And I want, he took her hands, not caring anymore who was watching. I want to give you what Thomas promised. Security. A home. A future. But I want to give it to you as a partner. Not as someone trying to own you. Eleanor was crying now, tears streaming down her face. You don't have to give me anything, Cole, I know. That's why I want to. He squeezed her hands gently. Will you let me? Will you give us a real chance? Not 3 days. But as long as it takes to figure out if what we started 9 years ago can become something worth keeping. What about Thomas? We'll deal with Thomas. Jack spoke up. I've already sent word to the marshal. If Ashford comes back, we'll be ready. And with Keller in custody, we have leverage. The man's a snake. But he's not stupid. He won't risk going to prison. Eleanor looked at Cole, at Jack, at the town gathered around them. At the people who'd heard everything and were still here, still watching, some with disapproval but others, like Mrs. Chen, with something that looked like hope. I'm scared, Eleanor whispered. So am I, Cole said. But maybe that means this is worth being scared for. Eleanor closed her eyes. Took a breath. When she opened them again, there was something new in her gaze. Not quite hope. Not quite trust. But the beginnings of both. All right, she said. Not 3 days. As long as it takes. But Cole, her voice strengthened. I need you to understand. I'm not the girl you married 9 years ago. That girl died with Rose. The woman standing here now is harder. More careful. She doesn't forgive easily. And she needs to know you see her. Not the wife you think you should have had. Not some idea of redemption. Me. As I am now, I see you, Cole said, and meant it. I see someone who tracked a stranger across Wyoming because she needed to be free. Someone who stood up to a man twice her size and told him no. Someone brave enough to give a broken man a second chance he doesn't deserve. He lifted her hands, pressed them to his chest where she could feel his heart hammering. You feel that? That's me being terrified that you'll change your mind. That you'll realize I'm not worth the risk. But I'm not running from it. I'm standing here, scared out of my mind, asking you to take a chance anyway. Why should I? Because you're scared too, Cole said simply. And maybe that means this matters to both of us. Eleanor stood there, feeling his heartbeat against her palms, and made her choice. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll stay. I'll try. But if Thomas comes back, then we face him together. From the porch of the general store, Mrs. Chen began to clap. Slowly, others joined her. Samuel. Even Mrs. Winters, though her applause was grudging, Jack grinned. Well, that's settled then. Welcome home, Mrs. Brennan, Eleanor laughed through her tears. I'm not sure I'm ready for that name yet, take your time, Cole said. We've got nothing but time now. Thomas Ashford did come back. 3 days later, with 2 hired men and a lawyer from Cheyenne. But he found Ash Ridge ready for him. The marshal had arrived the day before, and Vance Keller had finally talked, given up names, locations, enough evidence to put Thomas away for years. When Thomas saw the marshal waiting, he tried to run. The hired men scattered. The lawyer produced papers proving he'd had no knowledge of his client's criminal activities and disappeared as fast as his horse could carry him. Thomas Ashford was arrested for gun smuggling, racketeering, and attempted extortion. As the marshal led him away in chains, he caught sight of Eleanor standing next to Cole on the boarding house porch. You'll regret this, Thomas spat. Both of you, no, Eleanor said calmly. I don't think we will. And watching him disappear in the back of the marshal's wagon, Eleanor felt something she hadn't felt in 9 years, free. The wedding happened 2 weeks later. Not because they needed the town's approval, but because Eleanor wanted it. Wanted to stand up in front of witnesses and say vows that weren't born from desperation or alcohol or fear. Wanted to choose Cole Brennan with clear eyes and a full heart. The ceremony was simple. The circuit preacher came through on his monthly rounds. The whole town turned out, even Mrs. Winters, who'd softened considerably after hearing Eleanor's story. Eleanor wore a dress Mrs. Chen had helped her sew. Simple gray cotton with white trim. Nothing fancy. But when she walked toward Cole in the rebuilt church, she felt beautiful. Cole wore his best clothes, still not much, but Jack had loaned him a decent jacket, and when Eleanor reached him, he took her hands and held on like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. The preacher smiled. I understand you two have been married before. 9 years ago, in circumstances neither of you were prepared for. Today, you're here to renew those vows. To speak them with clear minds and full hearts. Cole, would you like to go first? Cole turned to face Eleanor fully, both her hands in his. 9 years ago, I made promises I didn't understand and couldn't keep, he said. I was broken and scared, and I thought dying would be easier than living. But you saved me without even knowing it. You gave me a reason to survive, even if it took me 9 years to find my way back to it. His voice roughened with emotion. I can't promise I'll be perfect. Can't promise I won't mess up or get scared or struggle. But I promise I will stay. I promise I will try. I promise I will love you with everything I've got, every single day, for as long as we both live. Eleanor was crying openly now. Not bothering to hide it. 9 years ago, I married you to escape something worse. I used you without giving you a choice, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm not sorry for what it became. For what you're trying to be now. She took a steadying breath. I promise to be honest with you, even when it's hard. I promise to tell you when I'm scared instead of pretending I'm not. I promise to build this life with you, not for you, but beside you, as an equal partner. And I promise to remember that love isn't about being saved. It's about choosing each other every day, despite everything," the preacher beamed. "By the power vested in me, and witnessed by this community, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Again. For real this time. His eyes twinkled. "Cole, you may kiss your bride." Cole pulled Eleanor close and kissed her. Not tentative or careful this time. This was claiming. Promising. Sealing what they'd both been too scared to fully embrace until now. The church erupted in applause, and when they finally broke apart, both of them were laughing through tears. The celebration afterward was simple but genuine. Food provided by the town. Music from Samuel's fiddle. Dancing in the street as the sun set. Cole danced with Eleanor, both of them clumsy and laughing, not caring that half the town was watching. "Happy?" Cole asked, terrified. Eleanor admitted. "But yes. Happy too. Good enough for me." They moved into the Caldwell house, their house now, and spent the next weeks making it theirs. Fixing the roof. Replacing the cracked window. Adding touches that spoke of two people learning to share space. Mrs. Winters surprised everyone by appearing one morning with a basket of baby clothes she'd knitted, just in case, she said gruffly. "And I wanted to apologize. For being harsh. I lost a daughter in childbirth, years ago. When I saw how young you were, I was frightened for you. But fear is no excuse for cruelty. I'm sorry." Eleanor accepted the apology with grace, and Mrs. Winters left with tears in her eyes. 4 months after the wedding, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. She sat on the bed they'd made together, staring at the evidence her body was giving her, and felt terror and hope war in her chest. The doctor in Cheyenne had told her, after Rose, that having another child would be difficult. Maybe dangerous, but here she was. Pregnant. With Cole's child. She waited until evening to tell him, when he came in from working the fence line, his hands rough and his face sunburned. "Cole," she said. "I need to tell you something." He saw her face and went still. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Maybe. I don't know." She stood, took his hands. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, Cole didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then he crushed her into his arms. Holding her so tight she could barely breathe. Is it safe?" he asked against her hair. "What did the doctor say?" "I haven't seen the doctor yet." "But Cole," she pulled back to look at him. "After Rose, they told me it might not happen again. That if it did, there could be complications. I'm scared, so am I." Cole cupped her face in his hands. "But we'll figure it out together. We'll see the doctor. We'll be careful. And Eleanor," his voice was fierce. "This time, you're not alone. Whatever happens, I'm here." They saw the doctor the next week. He was cautiously optimistic. Said Eleanor was healthy, that there was no reason to assume the worst. But he was honest too, said they should be prepared for anything. The months that followed were the longest of Eleanor's life. Cole hovered like a nervous shadow, barely letting her lift anything heavier than a teacup. She found it alternately endearing and infuriating, but when her time came, in the deep of winter with snow falling soft outside their bedroom window, Cole held her hand through every contraction. Didn't leave. Didn't flinch. Just stayed, whispering that she was strong, that she could do this, that he loved her. And when their son finally arrived, small but healthy, with a shock of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead, Eleanor looked at Cole and saw tears streaming down his face. "He's here," she whispered. "He's alive. He's ours. What should we name him?" Cole asked, cradling his son with trembling hands. Eleanor thought of Henry Caldwell, who'd given them a home. She thought of Rose, who would always be part of their story. "Henry," she said. "Henry Rose Brennan." Cole's smile was brilliant. Perfect. 2 years later, their daughter was born. They named her Lily, because Eleanor said their family needed some brightness after all the thorns. The years that followed were full. The kind of full that meant chaos and joy in equal measure. Henry grew strong and curious, always underfoot, always asking questions. Lily was quieter, more thoughtful, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn streak. The ranch thrived. Cole proved to be a natural rancher, patient with animals and land alike. Eleanor managed the house and the books, her careful planning complementing Cole's instinct and hard work. They fought sometimes. About money, about how to raise the children, about Cole's tendency to close down when things got hard and Eleanor's habit of pushing when he needed space. But they learned to fight fair. Learned to apologize. Learned that disagreement didn't mean disaster, and through it all, they learned to be married in ways that mattered. On their 10th anniversary, counting from that first desperate ceremony, not the second one that had made it real, Cole took Eleanor back to the barn where they'd sheltered from the storm. "Remember this place?" he asked. "How could I forget?" Eleanor smiled. "This is where I decided to stop being safe and start being brave." Cole pulled out a small box. Inside was a new ring. Not cheap silver this time, but real gold with a small stone Mrs. Chen had helped him pick. "The old ring is worn thin," he said, slipping the new one on her finger beside the old one she'd never stopped wearing. "Thought maybe you deserved an upgrade. But I'm not replacing it. Just adding to it. The old ring is where we started. This one is where we are now. Both matter. Both stay." Eleanor looked at the two rings on her finger, one worn and cheap, one new and precious, and felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you," she said. The word still felt new enough to be precious. "I don't think I've said that enough. But I do. I love you, Cole Brennan. And I'm grateful every day that I was brave enough to come find you." "I love you too," Cole said, kissing her there in the barn where they'd first started to become real. "And I'm grateful you didn't give up on me. Even when I'd given up on myself." Their children's laughter echoed outside, and overhead the Wyoming sky stretched endless and blue. Full of promise and possibility and the kind of hope that comes from surviving hard things together. They'd started with nothing but broken vows and desperate chances. They'd built a life. A family. A love that was real because it had been tested and chosen and fought for every single day, and in the unforgiving land that had nearly destroyed them both, Cole and Eleanor Brennan had found what they'd been searching for all along, not rescue. Not salvation, but partnership, two people strong enough to stand alone, choosing instead to stand together. It was enough, it was everything, and it was finally, completely theirs. Thank you so much for staying with me through Cole and Eleanor's journey. If their story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me bring you more stories like this one. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have given Cole a second chance? Or would you have taken Thomas's offer of security? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this story, check out the playlist for more cinematic Western romances. Until next time, remember, some promises carve themselves into bone, and some loves refuse to die. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.